I walked out of the hospital, the crisp paper of the test results clutched in my hand. The sun was warm on my face and a genuine wide smile spread across my lips. I couldn't wait to tell Leo. He was going to be a father. But the moment I pulled out my phone, eager to call him, the smile vanished. A news notification was displayed across the screen. Genius director Leo Vance's remake is a blockbuster hit, and his original leading lady is back. I tapped on the alert. There she was, Clara Croft, her face taking up most of the page. The headline read, "A Dream Realized After a Decade." The internet was buzzing with comments. Director Vance is finally back with his muse. He was never truly over her. Years ago, Leo had developed a film called Inferno, specifically for Clara. It was meant to be a declaration of his love for her, a story as fierce and unstoppable as a wildfire. But due to industry politics, the role that was supposed to be Clara's was given to someone else. When Leo was interviewed about it back then, he just shook his head, the bitterness clear in his eyes as he said there was nothing he could do. Now facing reporters again, Leo was smiling. He had finally achieved his goal. He looked at Clara with a tenderness I hadn't seen in years and said, "She is the only one who could ever play this part." Clara looked deeply moved, her eyes shining with unshed tears. That single moment was captured and shared across every social media platform. Everyone was cheering for their reunion, celebrating what they saw as a great romance finally coming a full circle. Everyone except me, because I was Leo Vance's wife. At some point, the test results slipped from my fingers. A passing car stirred the air, and the single sheet of paper was blown away, lost to the street. I looked up at the sun, which suddenly felt harsh and blinding. Leo and I had known each other our whole lives. I had been quietly in love with him for as long as I could remember. Just to be near him, I followed him to film school. But on the very first day of classes, he introduced me to his girlfriend. "This is Clara," he had said, looking at her with an adoration that took my breath away. "She's the person I love most in this world." Clara smiled at me then, a kind, easy smile. "And this is my little sister," Leo had added, referring to me. From that moment on, my feelings for him had to be buried deep inside. I watched them live out a passionate, all-consuming love story, supporting each other's dreams. They eventually broke up, the strain of poverty and ambition pulling them apart. Inferno became a way for Leo to process all the hurt and loss from that time. After the breakup, Clara moved abroad and didn't return. "Are you really over her?" I asked him once, much later. He took a long drag from his cigarette, exhaling a cloud of smoke that momentarily hid his face. "Yeah," he said, his voice soft. "It's in the past. You have to look forward." He stubbed out the cigarette and gently took my hand. "You're my present now, Amelia. I'll do my best to be a good husband." Our marriage was largely thanks to his mother. She had seen how I felt about Leo and worried that he would never move on. She engineered situations, subtly and not so subtly, to push us closer together. I never thought he would actually propose. Maybe he wasn't truly in love with me yet. Maybe he was just tired of fighting and compromising with life. But the chance to marry the man I had loved for 10 years was too powerful to resist. In the 3 years since our wedding, I poured my entire heart into our marriage. Slowly, we began to feel like a real couple. We had moments of genuine sweetness and quiet domestic comfort. I truly thought we could continue like that, building a life together until I saw that news report. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. No wonder Leo had been so busy lately, barely answering my texts, coming home late every night reeking of exhaustion. He had planned this all along, a grand gesture to make up for everything he and Clara had lost. He had started the moment she returned to the country, and I had been completely in the dark, naively planning to surprise him with the news of my pregnancy. It was already late when I got home. I tried calling Leo several times, but my calls went straight to voicemail. I had no choice but to phone his assistant, Ben. "Do you know where Leo is?" I asked. Ben hesitated. "He's still at a dinner meeting, Amelia. It's running late," he finally said. "Did he drink a lot?" I asked, a familiar worry creeping in. "Should I come pick him up?" Ben's voice sounded strained. No, please don't. It's fine. The dinner is wrapping up. I'll make sure he gets home safely. I sat on the couch in the dark living room and waited. When the front door finally opened, I stood up, but the words I was about to say caught in my throat. Clara Croft was standing in the doorway supporting Leo's arm. He looked startled to see me. "Oh, you've been staying at Leo's place recently?" she asked, her memory of me seemingly frozen in the past, when I was just his surrogate little sister. But I was his wife now. For a brief, sharp moment, I hated that we had kept our marriage a secret. Leo had claimed he didn't want our relationship to interfere with my budding acting career, so only our closest family and friends knew. Of course, Clara, having lived abroad for years, had no idea. She didn't know that I wasn't just staying at Leo's house. I had shared his bed for the past 3 years. "What are you just standing there for?" Clara called out, a hint of impatience in her voice. "Come and help me get your brother inside." She patted Leo's flushed cheek and muttered, half joking, "He's so heavy tonight." I'm not sure how my legs carried me over to them. Clara kept up a steady stream of chatter, telling me how much Leo had to drink, how the whole film crew tried to get him to slow down. "He was probably just so happy," she said softly. "It's not easy to get back something you've lost." Leo leaned heavily on me as I tried to guide him toward the bedroom. Suddenly, as if waking from a dream, he flinched and violently pushed my hand away. He turned and clung to Clara, his expression anxious. "Clara, don't leave," he pleaded, his voice thick and childlike. "Please don't leave me again." Clara soothed him gently. "I'm not leaving," she whispered. "I won't ever leave again." Only then did he seem to calm down. I just stood there, staring at the hand he had just thrown aside, and felt something deep inside me begin to fracture. I wanted to scream that I was his wife, but the words wouldn't come. "You two got married?" Clara's voice was sharp with disbelief, cutting through the tense silence. It pulled me from my stupor. I followed her gaze to the living room wall, where our wedding photograph hung in a large frame, Leo and I smiling side by side. The mention of our marriage seemed to shock Leo into some semblance of sobriety. The haze in his eyes cleared, and he instinctively called out Clara's name. But when he met her tear-filled gaze, his voice faltered, and a look of deep pain crossed his face. I stood frozen, a chill spreading through me. "Leo," I said, my voice trembling so much I barely recognized it. "Do you even see me?" He paused, his body stiff, before finally turning his head to look at me, his wife. Just then, Clara yanked her hand from his grasp and ran out of the apartment, sobbing. The moment she was gone, his attention left me completely. He took a few steps toward the door to follow her, then stopped. I held my breath, a foolish flicker of hope igniting in my chest. "Amelia," he said, his back still to me. "I should go find her. It's late. It's not safe for her to be out there alone." If he had turned around in that moment, he would have seen the light in my eyes slowly extinguish. Once the door closed behind him, I sank to the floor, silent tears finally spilling down my cheeks. The truth had never been so painfully clear. In Leo Vance's heart, no one could ever compare to Clara Croft. As long as she was around, his eyes would always follow her. I placed a hand on my stomach, the sorrow welling up inside me. 10 years of unspoken love, 3 years of marriage, and now this child I was just beginning to feel excited about? None of it mattered. Perhaps while I was dreaming of our future, he was already planning his return to the past. The clock on the wall ticked on, marking the slow passage of time. The floor felt cold beneath me. My emotions had spiraled out of control, but I had to think of the baby. I forced my trembling body to stand, turned off all the lights, and got into our empty bed. The darkness was suffocating, pressing in from all sides. Only a thin sliver of moonlight cut through a gap in the curtains, falling across the sheets. I lay there with my eyes wide open, staring into the blackness as my mind drifted. Leo and I had been neighbors, but we barely spoke at first. I grew up without a mother, and my father was indifferent to my existence, which made me an easy target for bullies at school. There was no one to stand up for me. That was until one day when Leo noticed the bruises I tried so hard to hide. When a group of kids cornered me again, he appeared out of nowhere like a hero. "You're the ones who keep picking on her, right?" he had said before dealing with them swiftly. "Apologize to her." I watched the kids who usually acted so tough bow their heads, while Leo stood beside me, his expression stern. In that moment, he seemed to glow. "Why didn't you ever tell anyone you were being bullied?" he asked me angrily as he walked me home. I looked down at my shoes and mumbled, "I'm Amelia. I was born unlucky. It wouldn't have made a difference." He stopped walking and gently placed a hand on my head. "It matters to me." From that day on, no one bothered me again. I had a brother, one who promised to always protect me. He brought me into his family, and his kind parents treated me like their own. In his home, I received a warmth and care I had never known. Falling in love with him felt as natural as breathing. My only dream was to stay by his side, so I followed him to film school. But that's when he met Clara. I watched him love her with a fierce passion that I envied with every fiber of my being. The distance between us grew. Still, I thought that maybe it was enough just to be in his orbit. Then they broke up, and years later, he proposed to me. It felt like a dream, like I had finally reached the moon I had been gazing at for so long. I naively believed it was destiny, that our story was finally beginning. I never imagined it was all just a cruel cosmic joke. After all these years, this was the end of the road. It was time to stop chasing. In the silence of the room, I got up and drew the curtains closed, shutting out the last sliver of light. Leo came home in the early hours of the morning, moving quietly so as not to wake me, but I was already awake. I walked out of the bedroom and turned on the living room light. He looked startled and uncomfortable when he saw me. "You're still up," he started. "Leo," I interrupted him, my voice surprisingly calm. "Let's get a divorce." My tone was flat, as if I were discussing the weather. I even managed a small, tight smile. "Clara's back. I'll step aside so you can be with her." There was about a yard of space between us. I looked him directly in the eye. His expression shifted from discomfort to shock, as if he couldn't believe what I was saying. The air grew still. "I don't agree," he said, his voice suddenly loud and firm. His face darkened with an intensity I rarely saw, and I instinctively took a step back. Leo seemed to notice he'd lost his composure. He softened his expression and walked toward me. "It's not what you think between me and Clara." That one sentence made it sound like I was the one being irrational. A hot surge of anger rose in me. "Not what I think?" I backed away from his outstretched hand, my voice trembling. "Then what is it? You made a public statement about how you can't forget her. You clung to her right in front of your wife, begging her not to leave. You were so concerned about her feelings, but what about mine?" By the time I finished, a tear had fallen onto my hand. I quickly turned my face away to wipe it. Some things are simply unbearable when you allow yourself to dwell on them. Leo was speechless. After a long silence, he finally admitted in a low voice, "I won't deny that I still have feelings for her, but I know what's lost is lost. That's enough." I was exhausted. I turned away from him, a dull ache starting in my abdomen. I gently placed a hand over it and whispered more to myself than to him, "I'm sorry, baby. I kept you up too late." The next day, Clara asked to meet me. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe. Her eyes were slightly red, and she looked as if she had cried all night. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I didn't mean for any of that to happen. I didn't know." She paused, then added slowly, "that you and Leo are married." I stirred the milk in my coffee, saying nothing. "I heard you and Leo argued last night because of me," she continued, a faint, sad smile on her lips. "You don't need to take it so hard. Leo and I are in the past. We missed our chance. You two, you have to be happy." A single tear escaped from the corner of her eye. She quickly turned her head to wipe it away, but I had already seen it. The entire scene felt strangely familiar, but this time, instead of feeling sympathy, I felt a wave of profound irritation. She looked so tragically nostalgic while trying to play the part of the magnanimous ex, wishing me happiness. It suddenly reminded me of Leo the night before, admitting he still had feelings for her while refusing to divorce me. It was as if they were both framing me as the obstacle to their great tragic love, and they were the noble ones holding back for my sake. It was so ridiculous I actually laughed out loud. That's when Leo appeared, rushing to our table. Clara, why are you crying? He asked, flustered. He grabbed a napkin and began to gently dab at her tears. Once again, it was as if I didn't even exist. My heart had gone completely numb. Clara glanced at me, then pushed his hand away. You should be worried about Amelia. She's your wife. Leo awkwardly pulled his hand back and sat down beside me. A heavy silence descended. Amelia, he began, but he never finished the sentence. He suddenly shot to his feet. Clara, you're having an allergic reaction. Clara gasped, covering her face as red blotches began to appear on her skin. Leo immediately realized it was the milk in her coffee. I knew she was allergic to milk. I remembered an incident years ago when I unthinkingly handed her a milk tea, and she broke out in hives almost instantly. Leo had rushed in, scooped her into his arms, and carried her to the hospital. Afterwards, he had looked at me with such blame in his eyes, as if I had endangered the most precious thing in the world. Now the scene was repeating itself. He lifted her into his arms again and rushed out of the cafe, his face a mask of undeniable panic. I was left behind, staring at the coffee on the table. Something felt wrong. Clara had ordered the coffee herself before I arrived. She knew it had milk in it. If she was so allergic, why would she order it? Then I remembered the milk tea all those years ago. She hadn't refused it then, either. It wasn't until she was being rushed to the hospital that I even learned about her allergy. At the time, I had been so consumed with guilt that I never questioned why she drank it in the first place. Comparing the two moments, the one constant was Leo's reaction, his immediate care, his panic, and his complete disregard for me. A thought began to form in my mind. What if Clara had done it on purpose? What if she wanted to remind me, and him, just how important she was? Love is like a fire. When it burns that brightly, it's impossible to hide. Leo's mother had seen my love for him, and so had Clara. Maybe this was her way of pushing me out of the picture, then and now. I didn't want to think about it anymore. My decision was made. I grabbed my bag, left the cafe, and went straight to a law firm. That night, I opened my message history with Leo. A few days ago, I had texted him, I have a surprise for you. He had replied hours later, what is it? I wrote back, not telling yet. You'll find out soon. I remembered the feeling from that day, the exhaustion and nausea mixed with a nervous excitement. I had bought the pregnancy test, my heart pounding as I waited for the result. When I saw the 2 pink lines, I almost cried with happiness. I thought I was one step closer to the family I had always dreamed of. But I never got the chance to tell him. He never even asked again. I let out a bitter laugh. All his attention was on Clara. Why would he care about a surprise from me? I typed a new message. I'm waiting for you at home, and hit send. When he finally came home, I was on the couch watching a comedy, laughing so hard I didn't hear him enter. He cleared his throat. I glanced over but didn't get up or smile. His brow furrowed. It was the first time I hadn't greeted him at the door. What are you watching that's so funny? He asked, walking over and reaching out to pat my head like he always did. But as he got closer, the scent of Clara's perfume hit me, and a wave of nausea rolled through my stomach. I flinched away from his touch. His hand froze in midair, his tone darkened. Amelia, he said sharply, his usual sign that he was losing his patience. In the past, I would have immediately tried to soothe him. Not anymore. I muted the TV. I had a lawyer draft a divorce agreement, I said calmly. Just sign it. His face went dark with anger. Amelia, have you had enough of this yet? I didn't understand his anger. I was the one giving up. I'm making way for Clara. Aren't you happy? I asked, genuinely confused. He let out a cold, humorless laugh. How generous of you. I lowered my eyes. I'm just being realistic. Someone who doesn't belong to me is someone I can't have, no matter how hard I try. So let's just get a divorce. Hearing me say the word again seemed to be the final straw. He gritted his teeth. Fine, but don't you dare regret it. I was quiet for a moment. Seeing my silence, his expression seemed to relax, a slight lift of his eyebrows suggesting he thought he'd won, that I would back down. But I looked at him and said calmly, Don't worry, I won't regret it. That's when he snapped. Great! He shouted, his voice cracking. I won't regret it either. Don't think for a second I won't divorce you because I'm in love with you. The only person I have ever loved is Clara. I have only ever thought of you as a little sister. If it weren't for our parents, I never would have married you. The words tumbled out of him, fast and frantic, as if he were trying to convince himself as much as me. I just stared at him, stunned. I had never seen this side of Leo. Leo, I said softly, my own voice a strange counterpoint to his rage. You were the one who proposed to me. I never forced you. We've been married for 3 years, and now you say you only see me as a sister. Would you kiss your sister? Would you hold her? Would you have a child with your sister? The truth about the baby finally came out, not in a moment of joy, but in the heat of a bitter argument. Leo froze, his lips parted, but no sound came out. I didn't want to talk anymore. The disappointment was a physical weight in my chest. In that instant, I knew for certain that Leo Vance was never worthy of my love. I pulled my wedding ring from my finger and, without a second thought, tossed it into the trash can by the door. Then I turned and walked out. Just as the door slammed shut behind me, I heard the sound of him throwing his phone against the wall, followed by the crash of something shattering. I didn't look back. I went back to the film set to finish my last few scenes. The finalized divorce papers were mailed to Leo's office, but I never received a reply. Work was a welcome distraction, but I wasn't feeling well. On the last day of filming, my phone rang. It was Leo's mother. Hi, Mom, I said, forcing a calm tone. Leo's been in a terrible mood lately, she started without preamble. And I found out you two are getting a divorce. I know you must be upset because Clara is back, but you can't just throw away your marriage over a little fight. Yes, I said quietly. It hasn't been easy. I loved him for 10 years, Mom. I waited, hoping one day he would see me. When we finally got married, I gave it everything I had. But I know now that some things will never grow, no matter how much you water them. I don't want to wait anymore. I'm serious this time. There was a long silence on the other end. Then I heard a door slam in the background. Her voice grew anxious. Why are you doing this? Leo didn't remake that movie to get back with her. He just wanted closure, she insisted. Do you actually believe that? I asked softly. She didn't answer. My manager, Sophie, waved at me. It was time for my scene. I have to go, I said, and hung up. After the shoot wrapped, Sophie patted my shoulder. I didn't schedule any new work for you, she said gently. You need to rest and take care of your body. I'm fine, I tried to joke, but she wasn't convinced. Look at you, you've lost so much weight. I promised her I'd take care of myself. Leo had been my whole world for most of my life, and purging him from my system felt like trying to unlearn how to breathe. In public, I could smile and pretend I was strong, but alone, the grief was overwhelming. Habit is a terrifying thing. Even knowing he didn't deserve it, I couldn't stop my mind from drifting to him. You're making that face again, Sophie said one day, pinching my cheek. Like a little ghost. She pulled me into a hug. Amelia, hang in there. Everything is going to be all right. When your baby is born, she whispered, painting a soft picture of the future. I rested a hand on my belly, clinging to that hope. Between takes, I found myself browse lists of parenting books online. That's when I saw Leo and Clara trending again. At a press conference, a reporter had asked if there was a chance they would rekindle their old flame. Clara had blushed and demurred. We'll leave it to fate. As they were leaving the stage, she accidentally tripped and fell into his arms, her lips brushing his cheek. The internet went wild. Surprisingly, I felt nothing. A calm detachment. I had tortured myself by watching so many clips of them together that I had finally become numb. The final day of filming arrived, and I knew it was time to formally schedule the divorce. As I was leaving the set, I was blocked by Isabella Rossi, the film's female lead and the girlfriend of our main investor. Do you know what a first love is? She asked me out of nowhere, her tone strange. It's the person who makes everyone else disappear. Clara is that person. And you're just dust. Why haven't you signed the divorce papers yet? It hit me then. Isabella must be related to Clara. How else would she know? But I couldn't understand why she thought I was the one refusing to sign. I came on my own, she snapped when I asked. I can't stand people like you, inserting themselves into a true love story. You're the third wheel. I almost laughed. They broke up 2 years before Leo and I got married, I said coldly. If their love was so true, why didn't he wait for her? And why did he marry me? I turned to leave, but she lunged forward and shoved me hard. You're full of it, she screamed. The force of the push sent me stumbling backward. I fell, my body slamming hard against the base of a tree. Isabella was about to mock me, but then her eyes widened in horror. She was staring at the ground beneath me where a pool of blood was slowly spreading. My head buzzed, and the world went silent. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my phone. When the emergency line connected, I could only choke out, "Please, please save my baby." Then everything went dark. When I woke up in the hospital, my first words were, "Is the baby still here?" My young assistant stood by the bed, his face pale. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I knew. I started hitting myself, sobbing. It's my fault. It's all my fault. Sophie rushed in and held me, trying to stop me. I lost my baby, Sophie, I wailed into her arms. All the books I'd bookmarked, the tiny clothes in my online shopping cart, all the dreams I had for this child, shattered. Leo came. Clara was with him. The sight of them sent a fresh wave of fury through me. I grabbed the water cup from my bedside table and hurled it at them. It smashed on the floor, a shard of porcelain slicing Clara's ankle. She let out a soft cry and looked at Leo, her eyes full of grievance. For the first time, Leo wasn't looking at her. He was staring at me, his eyes wide with a strange mix of disbelief and relief. "So," he murmured, "we really had a child." "That was my baby," I said through clenched teeth. "But now it's gone. Do you know why? Because of your neglect. Because of Clara's provocation. Because of Isabella's assault. I never hurt any of you, so why did you all hurt me? Why did you hurt my child?" I started screaming, grabbing anything I could reach and throwing it at them until nurses rushed in and ushered them out. I learned later that Isabella would face no punishment. The area was secluded with no cameras. With her powerful boyfriend backing her, it was her word against mine. "He's offered to compensate you with better resources," Sophie told me. There was nothing more we could do. Before I left the city, I finalized the divorce with Leo. He knelt on the floor of my apartment, begging me to forgive him, to start over, saying we could have another child. "That baby is gone," I told him, my voice empty. "And he's not coming back. His mother couldn't protect him. I couldn't even get justice for him. He must not like me very much." I traveled for a long time, visiting temples, praying for the child I had lost. I needed to heal. Eventually, I started auditioning again, pouring all my pain and experience into my work. My acting deepened, and directors took notice. Slowly, I began to build a new life for myself. Sometimes Leo would show up on my sets, looking worn and broken. He and Clara had been fighting constantly, and his career was stalling. "Amelia, please don't ignore me," he pleaded once, grabbing my arm. I shook him off. "Leo Vance," I said clearly, "stop interfering in my life." I took a challenging role, playing a deaf-mute woman in a film shooting in a remote mountain village. One day, a powerful earthquake struck the set. The building collapsed around me. I huddled in a corner, clutching the small dog that had become my on-set companion, and waited. Hours later, as I was fading into unconsciousness, I heard voices. Beams of light cut through the dust. Someone was digging through the rubble. I pushed the dog out first, then crawled out myself. Across from me stood Leo, covered in dirt, his face streaked with tears and grime. He rushed forward and pulled me into a fierce, trembling hug. "You're alive!" he choked out over and over. A medic rushed over. "Young lady, is this your boyfriend?" she asked, smiling. "The road was blocked by a landslide. He climbed for 6 hours over the mountains just to find you. Look at his hands. He's been digging through the debris until they bled." I glanced at Leo's raw, bloody fingers. "Thank you," I said to him sincerely. Then I looked at the nurse. "But we're not dating." The light in his eyes died. Later, a reporter asked me about it. We used to be neighbors, I said with a small smile. He's like a brother to me. Standing nearby, Leo's eyes turned red. He muttered the word under his breath. A brother, the pain in his voice unmistakable. The story, along with photos of his bloody hands, went viral. But the narrative that formed online was that I was the villain, trying to ruin his relationship with his true love, Clara. This time, I didn't stay silent. I posted a photo of my divorce certificate. Not long after, Leo posted his own confirmation. 3 years of marriage. I let her down, he wrote. The internet dug into the timeline and public opinion flipped instantly. The story of him and Clara reminiscing on their old college campus while I was in the hospital having a miscarriage came out. Their careers crumbled. Inferno was a box office bomb. Clara, whose comeback was built entirely on the fantasy of being Leo's muse, faded back into obscurity. I also made sure the story of Isabella and her married investor came to light. Her gilded cage came crashing down. Do you regret marrying Leo Vance? An interviewer asked me months later. I used to, I answered honestly. But not anymore. I've learned that every step in life has a purpose. If I hadn't married him, he would have remained an idealized fantasy in my mind. The marriage showed me the real person, stripped of the illusion of my love. It was a painful lesson, but a necessary one. Are you open to a new relationship? I smiled. A failed relationship doesn't mean I'm a failure. I won't say no to someone new. As long as you have the courage to begin and the strength to walk away if you have to, that's enough. Don't worry about me, I said, looking directly into the camera. I'm doing great. A year later, I stood on a stage holding an award for Best Supporting Actress. I hope I'll be back here again, I said into the microphone, my eyes burning not with pain, but with ambition. And I hope that when people hear the name Amelia Chen, they say, she's a damn good actress. 3 years after that, I brought home the award for Best Actress. I opened the door to my quiet apartment. My dog, Shadow, the one I'd rescued from the earthquake, was waiting for me. He leaped into my arms, whining happily. You missed me, huh? I laughed, hugging him close. I casually placed the heavy trophy on a shelf. Sorry I'm late, buddy. He licked my cheek and I laughed again, a sound of pure, uncomplicated joy. Who says this isn't a family? Who says this isn't home?